All right, so discussion on school menus. So first question, what are the pros and cons for the nutrition standards of the National School Lunch Program? And do you think they are good or not?
In a way, I think the nutrition standards of the NSLP are good because they have a certain layout for everyone to follow, and they're making sure that every student is consuming the right nutrients that they need to fulfill these requirements. But at the same time, these standards, I feel like sway people away from eating at school lunch because they don't look or taste as appealing as a child would want them to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that like some of the standards are a little too strict and there should be like room for like changes depending on like individual circumstances. Like maybe one school noticed that the kids are not eating carrots at all or something like that, instead of having like set regulations for everyone.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I think every school system should be able to kind of have their own, based on their own demographics, they should have their own ability to set those standards and even, and this may get into a future question a little bit more, but just have the flexibility to work with like local, grocers, local markets, local farmers and things like that. Just set their own program, knowing their own students. Everybody's different across the country.
So one thing I I came across while kind of like thinking about this was that there was a disability accommodation with the standards, and it actually accommodated to more things than I thought, such as like food allergies and intolerance, but also diabetes and celiac disease. So in that sense, I think it's really good to be able to include those students. But kind of wrapping back, there's not a lot of room for adaptability. So any cultural or community-based needs probably won't be met if they're sticking to those standards.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, good. Good. Anything else on that question? Good. All right. So the other question is, how would you change the program if you could?
Going back into what we talked about, I think the culturally conscious factor is huge. I think that I read an article that mentioned like sending surveys out. So it's asking students like what vegetable they like the most or what they want to see on the menu at least once or twice a week. So sort of that things we're not wasting food when they're giving them out in school lunches, and then also just taking into those considerations of everyone's like favorite items and what they like and what they dislike.
Yeah, I think also like especially like nowadays there's so many replacements like meat replacements or dairy or cheese, and like there's no like vegan or vegetarian options really at the moment. Like if milk is required, then there should also be like a non-dairy milk that would like meet the standards also.
Yeah, I think surveys is a good idea too. I mean, there's only so much compliance you'll probably get with that with parents. Just my husband used to work in the school system, and just knowing that parents aren't always all that involved, but trying to survey students, survey the parents, just get some kind of feedback just to figure out, just to cut down on waste. Like what if, and not necessarily giving them open options, but like, hey, would you rather have Brussels sprouts or carrots? Would you rather have this or that? Just to kind of narrow it down, give them some input, and that would, but yeah, going back to just cultural, being conscious of people in that particular, neighborhood or area. I think it's too broad to try to make this a national program for sure. I would change it to local, and maybe, like I said, work with local farmers. There's actually, I was trying to do some research on this discussion beforehand too, and there was a study. It was in Canada, but they actually were able to work with local farmers. They cut back on cost. It was a little bit more expensive than what they originally had budgeted for, but they were actually able to do a lot of fundraising. The students were able to do a lot of fundraising. That actually they ended up making a profit on it. So I think also getting kids involved too with their own food and understanding like local farming and things like that. There's a lot of different ways you can play it where they can learn kind of along the way. So I think there's better ways.
Yeah, that's interesting because my middle school actually, there was like a gardening club. So we would grow food at school and then that would be given out at lunch.
Oh,
So just
cool.
kind of getting people involved. I think any like awareness for students um, would help people want to eat at school more because we did that one assignment where it discussed how we would want more people to be involved in school lunching instead of leaving for school. I think more involvement, more awareness, and more options.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also think that like not even just children, everyone gets more excited to like eat something that like you've worked towards. So like if you like grew these tomatoes and you watched them grow and you
Mhm.
watered them, and like you're so excited when you finally have the final product. So I think it would make kids more enthusiastic also.
Yeah. And maybe they
Definitely.
don't like certain things because they've only experienced it packaged or maybe learning, like watching it grow, tasting it fresh. They'd be more open to trying things and then they'd eat more fruits. Like there was another study that said too, like only like 10% of kids, like school age kids, get the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables. Like maybe they would actually eat it if they could grow it and taste it fresh and all that. So
Yeah, definitely.
And then even like places like urban schools that don't have like the ability to have an actual garden, like there's so many like I think they're called hydroponic like systems now where you can just like grow it inside.
oh,
And like even though it's like a bit of an investment, if they like fundraise for it, like those systems just keep running and running even in the winter and the rain or whatever. So
yeah. Cool.
I was gonna say something, but I forgot. Uh, oh, I was gonna mention, during my middle school, one of my classes, we actually had to make dishes from around the world. And there was actually a lot of great feedback from the students. Just being able to try new foods, even if they don't like it, I think exposes them to new flavors. And if they do like it, let's say I'm Korean, so I made some Korean dish. Once they found out they really liked Korean flavors, they kind of went on to look for more Korean food. So I think exposure for children, especially whether they like it or not, is good because then it kind of allows them to explore like their taste palettes more.
Absolutely. So say your school has, or your community has a high percentage of like Korean students, like why wouldn't you start some of those Korean foods, and then the non-Korean students get to try it. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. That's a good idea.
Right. I think one last thing. I think encouraging, like you said, students and exposing students at a young age, children, I mean, that kind of opens up their options. And I mean, one of my close friends, she's a picky eater and she still doesn't eat a lot of things, which is crazy. But I think encouraging even parents to be like, hey, look, this is what we're having for dinner and let them eat whatever they want. Kind of.
Oh yeah. If kids are hungry enough, they will eat something.
Yeah, true.
That's for sure.
I will do the same thing as an adult. So cool. Anything else you guys can think of on that?
Part of kind of off of what Ellie was saying for the parents, obviously there's not something that we can force or tell the
Right.
parents to do, but one of the things I realized was if we provide nutrition education for the parents and also encourage them to expose children at home or when they're eating out, that's actually awesome as well because they're in a more comfortable setting with their parents. And again, more exposure, they can find out what they like and dislike. So I think that's also a good program or a good idea to install in the program.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else you guys can think of?
Nope.
Good.
Really.
All right, I'll stop
Okay.
recording.